Welcome back to your nightmares, my children. This is Mr. Midnight speaking. I welcome you all to my humble abode. Today, we will look at scary stories from the cabin in the woods. You know the one I'm talking about. The scary one with killers and ghosts and all things nasty. Let's begin. But before we do, make sure you like and subscribe, because if you do not, I will devour you. So now buckle up and always remember the darkness always follows. I will now leave you with my narrator, so enjoy.
Come to my cabin in the woods. When I was about 7, I went on a camping trip with my Girl Scout troop. We were up in the mountains, and right next to our cabin was a densely wooded area that went on for a while before leading down to another road that had other cabins lining it. Another girl and I decided to go exploring in the woods. We were out there for maybe 10 minutes when this big dog ran towards us and scared the crap out of us. We were about to run away when a young guy in his 20s came up and explained that it was his dog. After he assured us we were safe from his dog, he began to ask us our names and where we were staying. After talking to us for a while, he mentioned that he had a cabin a few roads down. At 7, I was fairly innocent, and it didn't occur to me that it was inappropriate for this man to be speaking with us. But when he suggested that we come with him to his cabin, I knew something wasn't right. I told him that we had to go before we got in trouble. But before I left, he suggested that we come meet him later that night if we wanted to see his cabin. I don't know for certain that he had sinister intentions, but as a grown woman, I'd be terrified if this happened to my child. The worst part is that he looked so normal. Just some young guy walking his dog. Staying in the cabin. Now, this story did not happen to me, but one of my friends who I worked with last summer at the camp that this took place at. And I think it would fit here pretty well. Sometime around 2000 or earlier, my friend had gone camping with his family. He's about 5 at this time. They had gone to this summer camp that his family had been involved with for years, and were allowed to use one of their cabins for the weekend because they were on good terms with the full-time staff. Now, the camp is divided into a few clusters of cabins, all of which were pretty old and creepy, and built in the early 1930s. They'd been well maintained, but never refurbished, and with just mesh windows and creaky big wooden doors, they could give anyone the creeps, especially with the winter wind blowing. My friend's family was staying in one of the cabins close to the building, where the camp director worked and slept. On the second day, as it was getting dark, my friend and his older brother, who was a regular counselor there for the past few years, went for a walk which led them down a winding dirt road to another cluster of cabins. They could both tell there was something wrong, but they couldn't place it. My friend several years later told me that it felt like everything looked completely ordinary, but it was like there was just something that completely threw the vibe off. His brother would attribute it to what he noticed next. The furthest cabin from the entrance had all of the windows closed. There were large wooden panels that had to be lifted up and put in the mesh windows. Then he heard a loud thud, and then the lights in the cabin were on. Now, it wasn't uncommon for other cabins to be rented out by hunters in the winter, so he left it alone even though he still had a strange vibe and decided not to investigate further. The next morning, during breakfast, he was speaking to the camp director and casually asked him how many other cabins he was planning on renting that hunting season, and mentioned that he had noticed that another cabin was being used back towards the far side of the camp. The director had a stunned look on his face and then told him to call the police and that they weren't renting out any of the other cabins that weekend. The police showed up, and after a 2-hour standoff in the middle of the woods ended with a man in custody. For the past 3 weeks, there had been a dangerous man hiding out in a summer camp. My friend didn't know it at the time, but was later told by his brother that when they took him out, he was starving and unshaved. He had a rifle, a pistol and a shotgun, and 2 duffel bags full of valuables that had been taken during violent break-ins over the past months in the surrounding counties. Yeah, desperate, violent robber hiding out in a cabin in the woods. Let's never meet. Cabin in the woods. Hi, so while I've been reading these stories for a while, I have very little experience posting. Hopefully this is in the right place. A couple years ago, my friend Kate had asked me to go with her to a party. This party was being thrown by her friend Susan. Kate had gone to Catholic school with her in elementary and middle school. But during high school, Kate ended up going to public school, where she met me, while Susan went to a Catholic high school. The two had grown somewhat apart and hung out with different people, which is why Kate invited me along. It was Susan's birthday, and apparently Susan's parents had decided to rent out a cabin for her. They did this for her the previous year, and unbeknownst to them, she had decided to throw a party. The party had been a hit, so she was planning on doing it again. Kate and I drove to the cabin together. The cabin was pretty isolated. Aside from the woods behind it, there wasn't anything around. We couldn't see other cabins, but I imagine they would probably be empty because it was winter time. I was a little apprehensive because I wasn't going to know anyone at the party, but I figured after a few drinks that wouldn't really bother me anymore. Also, if you watch scary movies, you know that having a party in a cabin in the woods is a horror movie cliche. I was very aware of that. Kate and I had even been joking about how attending this party sounded like a prelude to a horror film. As if that wasn't enough, this was a Catholic school girl party. We arrive at the cabin, and it is pitch black outside. We needed to use our phones just to find our way. We go inside. Everything seems fine. Birthday girl is having a fun time. There's a good amount of people. The odd thing is that there seems to be a strange sort of divide at this party. Kate and I were completely unaware of what was happening. I did happen to notice this classy guy who had the name of the city we lived in tattooed in a messy scroll across his neck. Kate and I had been silently laughing about it. We were also a little worried because we wondered if that meant he was in a gang or something. Anyways, I don't remember why, but the main group of the party wanted these people to leave. I think it had to do with them drinking a lot despite not having brought any alcohol of their own. So in order to get these people to go, the main group said that a ranger or whoever was coming to stop by, and there were only supposed to be like 2 cars by the cabin and a handful of people. Rumor was that one of the guys in the group was on probation and couldn't afford to get in trouble. They left. The plan was a success. Also, we thought. Just as the group leaves, there were about 4 or 5 guys and 1 girl. The girl comes back in and says, "I just want to tell the birthday girl happy birthday," in a really loud voice, drawing everyone's attention. Everyone was staring at her in confusion. Why was she announcing this? When not even 2 seconds later, we hear a window in one of the back rooms being busted open. This continues on, and more windows are broken. People are shouting and screaming. I'm just sitting there in confusion. Kate and I had been at this party for all of 15 minutes before all hell broke loose, and the girl who had invited the group of hoodlums is now saying that she knows at least one of them has a gun. Great. I don't know if my mind wasn't processing all of this correctly or what, but I'm sitting there thinking, well, this is happening. The majority of us remained in the cabin. A couple of people went outside to see if the group was still there, and after a little bit of time had passed, people began to leave. There was still some fear that those guys might be out there waiting, but a lot of people just wanted to get the F out. I remember 3 girls who had been planning on staying the night had gathered all their stuff up their arms were full and began heading out the door. As soon as all 3 walk out, we hear screaming coming from the woods, and all 3 girls immediately turn around and walk back in. In retrospect, it was kind of funny. One of the girls proceeds to start crying. Luckily, the scream had only been that of a new girl arriving at the party. She had seen her friend outside and had screamed in excitement. Kate and I had stayed at the cabin for a couple of hours. We really didn't want to leave Susan alone, and the majority of people had left at this point. Aside from us, there were only a couple of other people left in the cabin. Thankfully, those people were staying the night, so Kate and I were able to leave around 2 a.m. We had all debated calling the cops, but considering the underage drinking going on, no one really wanted to. Plus, Susan was worried about her parents finding out about the party, and had decided she was just going to lie about how the windows had been broken. Thankfully, the group of people, potential gangsters, did not return. While that night had been scary, all I can really focus on was the fact that this took place at a cabin in the middle of the woods at a party thrown by Catholic school girls. Of course, that would be the one and only party I've been to have scary shiz like this happen. Beware cliches.
Well, my children, I thank you all for listening. I hope these scary stories about cabin in the woods made you shiver in terror. I'll see you again very soon. So until then, love the darkness as it always follows.